This is NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Kia Miaka Natisse. Debra Lee is an entertainment industry legend. As the former CEO of BET, she helped shape numerous careers and, well, culture generally, while running the cable TV channel. But beyond the fancy celebrity award shows and powerful boardroom meetings were the relatable struggles of a woman trying to make it in a male-dominated space, battling against feeling unseen, unheard, and harassed. She shares her story in her new memoir, I Am Debra Lee. It's a bit of a business book with a healthy dose of career advice, some courtesy of the late, great Aretha Franklin. Here's Lee talking about battling good girl expectations with Here and Now's Celeste Headlee.
As the CEO of BET, or Black Entertainment Television, from 2005 to 2018, Debra Lee was one of the most powerful women in the entertainment industry. She also served as the organization's chief operating officer for 10 years and was BET's first general counsel. But as she recalls in her new memoir, for much of her career, Debra Lee had to deal with expectations that she be a good girl. As a Black woman, she was often invisible to her male colleagues who chafed at her promotions, and Lee's relationship with BET founder Robert Johnson was a complicated one, incorporating both mentorship and sexual harassment. Debra Lee's memoir is I Am Debra Lee, and she joins me now to talk about it. Debra, welcome to Here and Now.
Thank you, Celeste. I'm so honored to be with you today.
I have to say there's so many times relatable moments for me in your memoir where it seems like despite the successes you had, you felt unseen, even as a successful executive. And even when you were seen and able to speak, you felt unheard. And I
That's
wonder,
true.
to what extent is this book an attempt to remedy that, to be heard?
Well, a lot of it is my attempt to be heard. I'm a lawyer by training, so I like writing, I like editing, I like writing again. So some of these stories I didn't want to risk telling in isolation. I'm just not that kind of person. I wasn't that much of a public figure to talk about the abortion I had before law school, to talk about my miscarriage while I was working at BET, to talk about my relationship with Bob Johnson. But once I left BET and saw how these stories are relatable to other women and came, within the good times. I was able to meet Michael Jackson and had a reception for him at my house. I talk about my relationship with Aretha Franklin and difficult decisions like whether to let Chris Brown perform at the BET Awards. So I wanted to write a business book and give advice. But I thought the best way to do that was to tell stories.
There's a lot in this book, and you've just proven that. So let me try and pick apart a few of these threads. And let me start with Aretha Franklin, because in the same way that you offer advice in this book, some of it very practical, like here's how you ask for a raise.
Right.
It sounds as though Aretha Franklin was a mentor to you and gave you good advice. What did she teach you?
RESPECT is what she taught me, and she demanded that as a female entertainer.
RESPECT, find out what it means to me. RESPECT, take FTCT.
She taught me how to ask for what you wanted, even if it was above what someone was willing to give you. And I just learned a lot from her in terms of identity and how to be a female leader, but also be a woman. Because she never forgot her feminine side. And so over the years, we really became friends.
You mentioned your relationship with Robert Johnson, who founded BET.
Right.
And this is complicated. It's almost as though I'm not sure what question to ask you first. You had a relationship with him. He brought you on to BET, and eventually we ended up in a place where you were revealing how much that relationship involved sexual harassment.
Right.
How do you see this relationship now, looking back at someone who was sometimes a mentor, sometimes an advocate, and sometimes someone who was literally holding you back, not only in business, but in your personal life?
Well, it was definitely a complicated relationship.
Yeah.
For the first 10 years I was at BET, Bob was nothing but a mentor. I was his general counsel. I advised him on all kind of issues. We did many deals together. He eventually promoted me to COO. Over time, I didn't realize this till the Time's Up campaign came out.
The Me
But
Too,
over
yeah. And
time,
Time's Up was the
yeah,
Hollywood version, yeah.
over time, we had a romantic relationship. And then as I began to manage the business more and he turned to new ventures, there was friction on the business side. And then I think as I got my voice more and more, there were frictions on the business side and the personal side. And then that's when it became more abusive and harassment.
I'm going to stop you here for just a second because I would imagine there's going to be some people who really relate to the story that you're telling.
Right.
A relationship with a powerful man
Right.
that changes and evolves and ends up being a detriment. When did you first realize that this man who you'd loved, who had been your advocate and your fan in the past, was not on your side?
Well, I guess it became clear as we began to fight more. He started trying to micromanage me a little bit more than he did early on and wanted to make more decisions. And I revolted against that because I was the one there all the time. So I think that's when it became clear. And I tried to get out of it. But as I was trying to get out of it, that's when, the threats became clear about, well, if we broke up, I would have to leave the company. And again, as I heard more of the Me Too Time's Up stories, they were very different. They were abuse right from the beginning, and that's not my story. But because of that, I wanted young women to know it comes in different forms and looks differently.
And yet, just to be clear, for people who might still be wondering, how was this consensual relationship then become a Me Too movement? Robert Johnson always had the power,
Right.
and he was always willing to use it to manipulate you or try to influence your behavior. And as long as you were doing what he wanted you to do,
it was fine.
It was fine.
Right.
But as the reason that this is about Me Too or Time's Up is because the power differential did not only exist, but it was enforced.
Right.
Is that fair?
Very fair and very true. When I made the decision that the relationship was over, I should have been able to leave and not have my career hung over my head and say, well, if you break up with me tonight, you have to leave the company tomorrow. There's no grace period. There's no nice exit. I'm not going to provide a reference for you because you worked for me for 20 years. Your career is over, not only at BET, but anywhere else you want to go.
Yeah, that just...
and I wanted to be CEO. I've been trained to be CEO. I was doing most of the work as COO. And to have it snatched away because of a personal relationship or the threat of ending a personal relationship, that's the definition of sexual harassment. And no woman or man should have to go through that.
No argument here. I want to get to another great story in your book, which is you talk about the memorial event for Michael Jackson at the 2009 BET Awards, which were held shortly after his death. And host Jamie Foxx did the moonwalk. Explain why that was a moment that really helped you define not only the CEO that you were, but the kind of CEO you wanted to be. Can you explain?
We had decided as a management team and with the help of a consultant and my leadership that we wanted BET to stand for respect, reflect, and elevate. So the issue with Chris Brown was, should I let him perform a week after he admitted to guilt for assaulting Rihanna, without having paid his debt to society or done any community service? And what does that say to young girls or young boys? And some people made the argument, well, he's like a member of the family. We should take care of him. Everybody makes mistakes. But, as I went through it, I finally made the decision, no, he's not going to perform because he hasn't paid his debt yet. So that was a very hard decision to make because his record label was upset. His family was upset. A lot of people were upset. And, back to that good girl thing, you never really want to upset people. But sometimes you have to. So that really clarified for me that the ultimate decision was always going to be on my shoulder, and I was going to get the criticism or the praise. So it might as well be my decision.
Former BET CEO Debra Lee's book is I Am Debra Lee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Celeste. It's great talking to you.